Hello friends, it's Jessica from Three Rivers Homestead, and it's been a little while since I've brought you a bulk food haul from Azure Standard. So instead of just showing you all the food laid out on the table, I'm once again going to show you how I store each item. I'm going to show you the price per pound or per ounce that I paid so you can do some price comparisons for yourself. And then I'm going to show you some of the common ways that I use some of these bulk foods that I purchase. I have been a customer of Azure Standard for almost 13 years now. I was a drop coordinator for a while, for about a 5-year period, and I love the company. It is a really affordable way to get a lot of your bulk grains and dried goods and things like spices. You do have to price compare a lot because not everything is cheaper there, but I'm going to show you some of the things that I do prefer to buy this way. I am so excited because after 13 years, I finally have a drop point within a very short distance of my home. It's been a long time coming, and this helps me now not have to do orders, just big orders, just a couple times a year. Now I can do smaller orders on a monthly basis if I want to, because I don't have to factor in the cost of fuel to the overall cost of my groceries from there, which was the case when I had to drive up to maybe an hour away in order to pick up my orders. So this month I just took a look at my food inventory and we kind of assessed some of the grains and things that we are low on, and I did a little restock, and I'm going to show you what was in that order. We're going to start with some organic nutmeg. I like to get all of my spices from Azure Standard. I find that they have a really good price, but more than that, the quality of these spices are just amazing. Organic spices are hard to come by in the store options that I have available to me here locally. And if I do find organic options, the price is really high and they come in these teeny tiny containers, and I end up having to buy like 10 of them to keep in storage, and it seems very wasteful. So I love being able to just buy one big package of spices like this, fill my reusable glass containers, and then take the rest of it and put back in storage. And what I love about Azure spices is they come in these big Mylar bags, which are reusable. And what I like to do is just cut the bag down to a smaller size, and then I take my little straightening wand here and use it to seal up the Mylar. And then it's kind of airtight, and I can put it down in storage and continue to replenish. If I buy it in this large 1-pound package, I get a much better price per ounce than if I were to buy it in smaller packages. They do, if you're in a smaller family or you don't do a lot of baking, they do sell spices in smaller sizes, but the price per ounce or per pound is definitely going to be higher. So you're getting your savings when you purchase in bulk like this. So speaking of purchasing in bulk, I did decide to buy a 30-pound box of organic raisins. I find that this time of year we don't have a lot of fresh fruit options available yet, but my kids really do love raisins, and I know that they're good for them. They're a nice little fruit treat that they can have, and I'm going to show you some of the other ways that we use raisins here after I show you what I do with this big old box. The thing is, when you buy it in a big 30-pound box like this, it's like a huge brick of raisins, and it's not very convenient for if you want to just get something out for a snack. And so I do like to portion them out into much more manageable amounts. I have these old upcycled lunch meat containers, and you guys have seen me use these for all sorts of projects here in the kitchen. And so I like to just take those and fill them up and to the amount that I would probably use in about a week. The kids will use these raisins just for snacks. I might use them in a baking project, and my husband even likes them in his oatmeal. So I, out of that 30-pound package, got 26, I believe, something like that, 23. Yeah, I think it was 23 containers of raisins. So that'll be enough to get us through about half of the year if I just use one of these containers a week. And you can see my canning shelves of fruit are getting a little low down there, but in place of canning, we're just putting some of this dried fruit here, and that'll have to get us through until I'm able to get more bulk fruit into jars over this growing season. The next item in this order was a big 25-pound bag of organic whole oat groats. If you're unfamiliar with what oat groats are, they are the actual seed that you get from the oat plant that you would roll out to get something like your old-fashioned or your rolled oats. If you do something like a steel cut oat, it is like this oat groat that's kind of broken down into smaller pieces, and it takes a little longer to cook that way. But I like to keep my oat groats whole, and as you'll see, I'm filling up 1 gallon size Mylar bags with the oats because that's how I store them in my kitchen. I will, in my pantry, keep a 1 gallon glass jar full of the oat groats to use. And as one of those jars empty, it's just much more convenient to run down to the pantry and grab a 1 gallon Mylar bag from storage, and then the entire contents of that bag can be put into my glass jar. And so I simply fill the Mylar bag, and then we do toss an oxygen absorber in there, and that keeps it airtight. And these oats will last years and years this way. We don't go through a whole lot of oats, so 1 gallon in the glass jar might last us months upstairs. And so this is why I want to put the remaining oat groats into Mylar with an oxygen absorber. Not only will it keep them fresh, but because the lack of oxygen in that bag, it will prevent any pests from maybe that could be in the grain, pantry moths and weevils and things like that. Those will die. And so once again, just going to use our hair straightener to seal up the Mylar bag nice and tight, and then we can get those down in storage. So to use your oat groats, you need to have an oat roller. This is the one that I have, and we just pour them in the top. I just opted to get a manual oat roller, but they do have electric models that are much like a grain mill. You just pour them in the top and hit a button and it'll do the work for you. And it's really simple to just roll out the oats you need as you need them. The benefit of doing that is the same as grinding your wheat berries fresh. The longer you keep that whole seed intact, the fresher the nutrients in the grain are going to be, and the longer they will store before going rancid or going bad. And so obviously one of our favorite ways to use our oat groats is to roll them out and just to make oatmeal for breakfast. And you guys have seen me make this many times. I do soak my oats overnight with a little bit of acid to break down the phytates in that and make it easier to digest. And then we'll add all sorts of fruit and different types of sweeteners to our oatmeal. It just makes a really easy breakfast. We always try to serve it with some type of protein. So that's one way I use the oat groats. But another way to use the oat groats is to grind those whole oat groats down into flour just like you would with a wheat berry. And so I use my same grain mill and just pour those oat groats in the top, grind them down, and make yourself a flour. If you are someone who is gluten-free, this is a great affordable way to make a gluten-free flour for yourself. I've looked online and in local, I actually can't find it in local stores, but online prices for oat flour, we're looking at maybe for organic $5 to $6 a pound, but I'm paying $1.22 a pound for my oat groats, so that really does save me a lot of money. And so this week I did make some oatmeal raisin cookies, and the flour that I used in my cookie recipe was the oat flour. They turned out amazing. I was able to use some of my brand new nutmeg in the recipe, and that's another way that we enjoy using our freshly rolled oats is in baked goods and baked treats. They're always a hit with this hungry crew. Obviously, cookies are a favorite around here. My next purchase this month was a little 16-ounce glass of balsamic vinegar. You guys know I make a lot of vinegars from scratch. Balsamic is just one of those special things that I like to buy, obviously, instead of make. And it just makes a really good marinade or a salad dressing. This week we were grilling some steaks, and I actually ran out of our old balsamic vinegar, so I was happy that I had just purchased a new one. I wanted to have a salad with our steaks and make a salad dressing. So to make that, I just use equal parts of the balsamic vinegar, some oil, add a little bit of water. I do honey, mustard, salt, pepper, and I'm adding some garlic scape powder, and just makes a really easy salad dressing. And sometimes if I don't have balsamic vinegar, I'll use some of my homemade apple scrap vinegar, apple cider vinegars. But there's something about the balsamic that just makes it really fancy. Sometimes I like to make balsamic glazes, and so I really like the flavor of the Azure brand balsamic vinegar. I think it's a really good price and a really good quality product. So on to another bulk grain that I needed to restock after the long winter of baking and cooking during the pantry challenge, and that was buckwheat groats. So much like an oat groat, as you can imagine, buckwheat is the seed from the buckwheat plant. And these are groats, the hull or the husk of the seed has been taken off. I prefer the flavor of these. They make a really nice flour, a buckwheat flour. And once again, if I were buying buckwheat flour in the grocery store, I would be paying probably, $5 to $6 a pound for organic. That's if I can find it. It's really not an easy flour to find at every grocery store. So purchasing it this way, you get a much better price per pound, and you have a fresh product that you can grind yourself. But then you can also keep the buckwheat whole and make like a kasha cereal. There's a lot of things. It's really versatile, and that's another reason that I love buying the whole grains in the seed form, is that you don't just use them to make flours. You can also use them in other applications. So buckwheat waffles and buckwheat pancakes are one of our favorites here. When I want a waffle or something like that, that's what I will eat because I can't eat gluten. And so this is just a really wonderful treat. So we put a little bit of the buckwheat in a 1 gallon glass jar, just like we did with the oat groats. And then the rest of these are also going to go into storage with an oxygen absorber. And then just like with the oat groats, when we run out and empty out our glass gallon jar, it's much easier for me to run down to the cellar and grab 1 gallon worth of berries than to have to haul these big 5 gallon bags up and down the cellar stairs. So I do this purely for convenience. And the same can be said for our hard red wheat berries. I'm going to store these in a way that will make it the most convenient for me. So it wouldn't be convenient for me to put hard red wheat berries. This is what we use for baking bread. And since we do a lot of baking with these berries, I don't need to waste the Mylar and put them into 1 gallon packages. We would just fly through those too quickly. It's just not an efficient way to store them. So what I'll do is fill 2 glass gallon jars to keep them up in the kitchen. And then you're going to see me take the rest of this bag and put it down in our little freezer that is down in the cellar. I'm going to freeze them to prevent any pest growth. The oxygen absorber in the Mylar helped prevent pest growth in the things that I stored that way, but I can't just put this bag downstairs without having frozen it to prevent any pest growth. So it's a small enough amount of berries that we're just going to stick it in this freezer, freeze it until over the next couple of weeks I'll use up the wheat berries that are upstairs in the glass, and then we can dig into those once we thaw them out. Another favorite purchase of mine from Azure is their fragrance-free dish soap. It's free of a lot of the nasty chemicals that are in traditional dish soaps. We just keep a 5 gallon bucket of it underneath the kitchen sink and then fill up a smaller container to use to wash our dishes. I really like that soap. Next purchase was a 5-pound bag of organic arrowroot powder. This is another gluten-free staple. If you're doing any kind of gluten-free baking, you want to keep some of this in your house. It's a great thickener to use in place of flour for things like gravies, or if you're going to make like a chicken pot pie or something like that. Sometimes cornstarch isn't made with the healthiest ingredients, and arrowroot can also replace cornstarch in any of your recipes. You guys have seen me in a lot of my canning. I use arrowroot powder in place of cornstarch or clear gel to make my pie fillings, and it works out really well for me. Sometimes if you have a really juicy fruit like this, like the blueberries, you're going to want to double the amount of arrowroot. So maybe instead of adding a cup, if your recipe called for a cup of cornstarch or a cup of clear gel, I will add 2 cups. And then I'm adding these 4 jars canning lids to this batch of blueberry pie filling that I did this week. Azure now sells 4 jars canning lids, but I would recommend you purchase them directly from the website using my link in the video description because you can get 10% off that way. You're not going to get that 10% off if you buy them from Azure. So, as I mentioned, I used my arrowroot powder this week to make some blueberry pie filling. I've used the arrowroot for all sorts of pies: apple pie, peach pie, pear pie, strawberry, you name it, and it always makes a really wonderful end result. So, this is how my 2 blueberry pies turned out this week. I didn't bake a lot of pies this year for some reason. We were just, I guess, craving other types of desserts, but for some reason the family has been requesting pie lately, and so I'm working through using some of our stash of what we canned last year to make some room on the shelves for what we're going to do this year. My final purchase in this order was a 5-pound bag of beef gelatin, and this beef gelatin is gelatin just like pork gelatin, like a Knox brand gelatin that you would purchase from the grocery store. I just like this beef gelatin. It's sourced, it's just a little purer of a gelatin. Sometimes you have to worry about, since gelatin is made from the bones of the animals, you just want to make sure they're healthy animals if you're going to be eating this powder. But I use these. You guys have seen marshmallow fluff that I was addicted to throughout my pregnancy and beginning of my postpartum journey. I also use them to make Jell-O and these gummies that I'm making right here. I mean, we fly through gelatin if I'm really being diligent about making my snacks homemade instead of purchasing them in the store. And so that's a really affordable and healthy way to make your children some little treats. So that was it. It was a smaller order because, like I said, now I have local drops, so I might be making more frequent orders, but a little smaller. So I'm just getting everything put away down in the pantry. My pantry needs a huge organization day. I need to get down there and deep clean and organize, but that is going to be for another day. But for now, I think that's it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed this little peek into what I do with some of this bulk food and how I store it and some of my favorite recipes. I will be back next week with another video of the adventures happening on our homestead. Until then, I hope you guys are having a wonderful week and enjoying some wonderful spring weather. We will be back next week, friends. Until then, bye.